Good evening and welcome to Arizona Illustrated for Thursday, the 1st of November, 2012. I'm Tony Paniagua. No matter where you drive in Arizona or the rest of the country, you are likely to see a variety of political signs for different candidates or propositions, which made us think about their economic impact on local sign companies. You might think these companies benefit from a big boost in business, but most of the merchants we spoke to say these signs of the times don't necessarily translate into cold hard cash. It's a sign of the times every few years when politicians want your attention and your vote. Whether you hate them, love them, or really don't care either way, political signs pop up like weeds after our Sonoran Desert summer rainfalls. They take over city corners and other available lots where their numbers often grow and multiply, trying to attract drivers with their colors and messages like plants entice pollinators.
Thank you for calling Graphic Impact. This is Ashley. How may I help you?
You might think this is a great opportunity for local businesses that specialize in signs, but the reality is rather different. Here are the owners of 3 companies in Tucson.
We've never seen any bump when any politicians are running here in Tucson.
We really don't do many political signs. In fact, we didn't do any at all this year.
If I had to guess, I would say 70% of all candidates go out of town.
So why don't most local sign companies benefit from this boom in advertising? Merchants say one of the reasons is as simple as your nearest computer.
So they're at home, feet up on the chair, watching Fox News, looking on the web, and all of a sudden they see signs $8 a piece. Take out your credit card, order the signs, and sometimes in a week they'll be there.
Another factor involves the signs themselves. Most of these placards are done by a process known as screen printing. Screen printing allows for multiple copies at relatively inexpensive prices compared to the more sophisticated digital systems.
Screen printing is actually, it's like painting. And what we do is digital printing. So there's really a tremendous difference in that. Like, for example, this is art canvas that we can print that looks just like, like a canvas you'd see anywhere at an art museum. And the political signs are not. They're just simply screen printed with a few colors.
But even though the larger screen printing companies may have some advantages, local businesses say Tucson merchants can offer their own benefits. These are tools that are tied to the community.
I think what the politicians need to do is to select a sign company such as ours that gives them the full marketing approach, not just the signage on street corners. We also can provide them bumper stickers, little buttons, the full gamut of marketing. A lot of them don't really do that in a robust way monetarily because of their limited budgets. But the ones that have money, I think they should look at that as a marketing approach.
Anything from banners, decals, key rings, and the newest thing coming up are T-shirts. Why not put your face on a T-shirt, tell people what you're running for, tell people what you believe, and send them to a U of A football game to advertise for you.
So in addition to finding out about the politicians, their experience, and their stance on the issues, next time you're considering a candidate, you may also want to ask him or her something else.
Why aren't they buying here and buying from us? We used to have a lot more employees working here, and of course, if they purchased a lot more signage here, how many more workers will we have working here? Or other sign shops, or all the residual businesses that feed off of the politicians as well. You know, restaurants where they have the election parties, et cetera, et cetera. Locally is the way to go. If you want to get elected here, use local businesses.
And we know Tucson. You know, we live here. We think we know what motivates our voters here, and we're happy to pass on that knowledge.
It may be too late for this election, but it sometimes seems like the next one is just around the corner. We did hear about one sign company in Tucson that is getting a chance to make these products, but when we called that establishment, a representative said her company was not interested in being interviewed or providing information. This week we have been telling you about the propositions that are on Arizona's ballot and will have an impact on your life. And tonight we continue the conversations with Propositions 118, 119, and 120. They relate to state lands and sovereignty. Michael Chihak has that interview.
Proposition 118, very complex, involving the state land trust and how the money out of it is distributed. What's the basic change in the formula that we should look for in this proposed constitutional amendment?
Well, basically, it would provide a 2%, 2.5% of the fund's average market value over the last 5 years. That's basically what the change would be to the formula.
And the idea there would be to smooth out the payout so that there's some payout in some consistent manner each year as opposed to huge fluctuations. Is that right?
That's correct. In the past, or currently, they were using the current formula. It's entirely possible that there are years where there is no payout or very little payout at all. And that's been the case for, looking historically, that's been the case for the last 10 years. And that's not in dispute. What this proposition will do is to smooth that out, guarantee an annual payout, but at smaller distributions.
Now let's talk a little bit about what this fund is. It's based in history. Before Arizona even became a state, it was allocated about 11 million acres by the federal government to be held in trust. The proceeds from sales or royalties from the use of those lands went into this trust fund, which is now about $3.5 billion, correct?
That's correct.
And then the payouts from this go primarily to K-12 education in Arizona.
That's correct, yes.
What Proposition 118 would do then would be smooth it out so there aren't those great lows or those great highs. But what would that mean for public education as far as funding goes?
Potentially, it could mean lower payouts to public institutions like education. That's the main worry of opponents to the proposition.
Now, the analysis you did talked a little bit about the formula that was used to determine how they would balance that payout, and there may be some issues with that analysis going forward in how they averaged it out. Talk about that.
Well, one concern has to do with a lot of this projection was based on a 19-year fiscal projection into the future. That's a long time. And most economists will always say you want to take that with a grain of salt. It's virtually impossible to predict the future that far in advance with a great deal of certainty. That doesn't mean that it won't happen as projected, but it certainly, it's open to question whether that scenario will bear itself out.
Now, a couple of years ago, K-12 education in Arizona got $0 from the fund because of the current formula and what the payout was, again, at the depths of the recession. Under the formula that is proposed in Proposition 118, there would be a guaranteed payout every year. Is that a good thing?
The advocates say, yes, that is a good thing. They'd rather settle for less funds, but funds nevertheless. And so they would certainly argue that, yes, that's a good thing.
What is the essence of Proposition 119?
In essence, the Prop 119 will amend the Arizona Constitution to allow the state to exchange state trust lands for other public lands for the purpose of protecting, if it's related to military facilities, or for the purpose of developing public land for sale or public use.
And who are its proponents?
Basically, you have an alignment between business interests, primarily those in the defense industry, and environmentalists. It's a weird sort of thing this time around. Their interests both line up almost perfectly on the issue.
And in fact, the vote to put it on the ballot was unanimous in the state house, as you pointed out in the analysis you wrote. But 11 Republican senators voted against it. Why was that?
Their concerns stem from concerns about state sovereignty. It's more about they worry about the further encroachment, in their view, about the federal government over Arizona public lands.
Now, Arizonans have rejected a half dozen similar measures in the last several elections. What makes a difference with this one, and does it have a better chance?
Well, in the past, Arizonans have always been concerned about, are we giving land developers an unfair advantage in these types of deals? And the answer has been basically yes. They felt that that's been the case in the past. This time around, however, this is very cleanly worded. You've got proponents in business and on the environment, including the Sierra Club, for example. Businesses like it because it safeguards contracts, which in turn could potentially reduce the risk of job loss. That's a big issue these days. Environmentalists like it because it provides safeguards against over-commercialization of at-risk lands that may be adjacent to military facilities. So the answer is yes. I think chances are greater this year that the public may like this if they understand the details of what the proposition has in mind.
Proposition 120 is called the State Sovereignty Act. What would it do?
Basically, it would it would amend the Constitution to give Arizona the exclusive rights over its land and resources inside state borders.
That means including land that is now controlled by the federal government?
Yes, yes.
But there are some exceptions to that federal land.
There are indeed. It does not apply to Indian reservations. It does not apply to current U.S. lands related to military installation, U.S. forts, and things like that.
Who are the proponents of this, and why are they pushing it?
Well, the proponents believe their concern stems from a states' rights issue. They believe that Arizona is better suited, is better positioned to manage and better exploit the lands within its borders. They think that the current situation puts the state into an unfair situation relative to other states historically. In their arguments, you will often hear something referred to as, quote, equal footing. And that refers to the proponents' belief that Arizona was not giving that equal footing when these laws were first devised in the first place.
And then who are the opponents of it, and why do they oppose it?
The opponents are principally coming from the standpoint of it's a constitutional issue, that this would be immediately challenged in state because they under what's called the Supremacy Clause from the U.S. Constitution, giving the power of the federal government to make these kinds of determinations based on congressional mandates.
Now, the analysis you wrote concludes that if Proposition 120 passes, it will most likely be challenged by the federal government. Would you explain that?
Yeah, it's most scholars that I talk to say it's virtually guaranteed. There is precedent for this already on the books. There was a Supreme Court case a number of years ago that sort of specifically dealt with this issue, and the court came down on the side of the federal government in terms of declaring that the Supremacy Clause is indeed the supreme law of the land, and that a state cannot opt out of that for the reasons that's outlined in the proposition.
And any notion of what chance this has of passage?
This one's hard to say. There's a great deal of history behind it, much of it fascinating, but it may turn on how much the voter understands the background of this thing and how it came about, and what's fair and not fair to the state of Arizona.
The International Rescue Committee in the United States has been helping to resettle people from around the world for decades. Initially, many came from European countries, but a growing number of recent arrivals represent different corners of the world from continents like Asia and Africa. Next, we are joined by the new director of the IRC in Tucson, Jeffrey Cornish. With him is Pam Simon, a longtime volunteer and supporter. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's begin with you, Jeffrey. So when did you hear about the job here in Tucson, and what were you doing when you applied for the position?
Well, when I applied for the position, I was in the Gambia in West Africa, and I was acting as the country director for the U.S. Peace Corps there. I heard about the position because we were looking forward to coming back to the United States to kind of put down our roots here after being abroad for about 12 to 15 years. So it seemed like a perfect match for me. I'd spent a lot of time in the refugee camps overseas, and it was a chance for me to come full circle and work with the resettlement of refugees here in the United States.
Okay, and we'll ask you a little bit about IRC in a minute, but Pam, when did you hear about this organization and why did you decide to become involved?
Actually, I first heard about it when I was working for Congresswoman Giffords, and I visited the then director of the IRC and learned about what they did in the community. But I really got involved when, through a friend, I became a mentor and a volunteer with a family that had just come from the Congo, though they had spent 12 years in a Tanzanian refugee camp. And it opened my eyes to an incredible world that I was not aware of.
And you've been volunteering ever since.
I have. I've been mentoring with this family with the help of others, other friends. And I went through the volunteer training program, and I found out that you can give a little or you can give a lot, and it's all appreciated. Just has been a really, really, truly rewarding experience.
And Jeffrey, what are the numbers approximately of refugees that we get here in the Tucson area? And then what needs to be done with the people that arrive? Like, what are some of the priorities?
Sure. Well, first of all, let me tell you, there are 16 million refugees worldwide, and only about 100,000 of those refugees have a chance to resettle in a third country. The United States takes 70,000 of those refugees as legal immigrants. So they come into the United States, and with organizations like the IRC are charged with helping them to resettle. But the program is based on trying to resettle them and make them self-sufficient as quickly as possible. And this is what we do in the Tucson office.
So, for example, if somebody comes from a different country, we were talking ahead of this interview, they've never been to a bank, or
right.
They didn't even have a refrigerator in their home. Those are some of the steps that you have to take with these people?
Exactly right. And we have a wonderful volunteer program, which Pam can testify to, in which we use volunteers as well as staff members to mentor these refugees through these processes: how to open a bank account, how to shop in a supermarket, right? The most healthy way. We have a health and well-being, a Center for Well-being department that literally takes refugee women through a large supermarket. And one of the tricks we use is we usually do the perimeter first, because this is where the healthiest food in a supermarket is located. So things like that, we're coaching.
All right, Pam, and if somebody might be interested in doing what you've been doing, what would you say to him or her? Is there a lot of satisfaction involved?
There absolutely is. And I would encourage them to do the volunteer training, even if they weren't sure how much time they could commit. It's a really interesting process. You learn more about the refugee situation worldwide. But the true satisfaction comes from the interaction. And really, we are more the same than different. The refugee mother that I work with has the same goals and aspirations for her children that I do for mine, and it has been such a pleasure helping them and watching the tremendous growth that they have had. And, someday their son or grandson may be our doctor or lawyer, and that's the immigrant story.
Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us. We'll have more information on our website. Thank you. Millions of people begin their day with a cup of coffee, but there is much more to this industry than meets the eye. Next, we meet a coffee expert who has a very interesting story about autism and his passion for coffee. He works as a consultant in many countries, but he makes his home in Tucson. Luis Carrion has that story.
So,
It's my birthday.
happy birthday.
Another high five for that.
Basically, instead of making that big urn of coffee for people, you're making every cup for the person. So nothing's stale, nothing's old, nothing's off temperature. Everything is made up just for you. Every time that we're doing this, we're making sure that the rough ratio is going to be about 1 gram of coffee for about every 14 or so milliliters of water. Coffee is measured out to the gram for every cup. Hot water is dosed in here, taking into account for latent heat through the air and the kettle. Then we go ahead and we load up these. These are called Harios. These V60 drippers. They're beautiful. The first thing I want to do is I want to create a bloom. And this bloom is just about 60 or so milliliters of water. can go about as high as 80. What I want to do is I want to make the coffee heavy. So the coffee is giving off large amounts of CO2. Once it's ground and it's been milled, it'll continue to do just that. But I don't want the coffee kind of spinning all over it here. I want to give this guy a good cup of coffee. So if I'm going to do that right, I have to make sure that the grounds are going to stay from the bottom and all the water has to flow through. Otherwise it doesn't.
My name is Noel Trapp. We are at Exo Roast Co. and I am the Director of Education here. I teach people how to extract coffee differently and about the social process that goes along with it.
Sono troppo stanco oggi.
I understand.
So, what you need?
A nice best.
One cortado.
You know, I mean, I certainly threw tantrums, and I definitely, you know, would bawl and weep. It was more, you know, if I got a new set of Legos, I had to put them together exactly as the instructions dictated. And if I missed a step, I would have to go back and remove the pieces in the order I'd placed them. And I would play with these for, you know, 6, 8, 9 hours. And if you tried to move me away from them, that was when there would be crying. Yeah, people on the autistic spectrum tend to hyper-focus on 1, 2, sometimes 3 different areas. For me, they kind of settled into coffee, for better, for worse. I know more about coffee than I probably should, and far less than I want to, but also literature and music. Into your pre-wet filter. I remember my childhood like anybody. I think the primary difference is that it's mostly factual. Like there's really not anything in the way of there's not a lot of emotion attached to the memory. Like the memory is just the memory. You were at this place. This occurred. This is what you remember thinking. But it doesn't evoke an emotional response to remember as it does for some people. That doesn't happen to me at all. I remember there was an instance where I was on a beach. It was probably about 5. It was basically the first time you realize you're a perishable item, so to speak. You know, you can die, and it didn't really bother me. Thinking to myself, oh, this is essentially if no one finds me because it was an abandoned beach. It was just us and like one other family. This is potentially a damaging incident at best. Several things saved me. One, both of my parents being educators and being raised in a family where articulation was highly valued. 2, I presented atypically in that I presented lingually rather than, say, mathematically. I'm certainly not anywhere near a savant when it comes to maths. I never became obsessed with, say, differential equations. I think I'm okay with that.
Every morning I've got a new chance.
Now we go to our weekly segment from Damian Klinko, the president of the Tucson Historic Preservation Foundation. Klinko takes you on an educational journey to some of the cultural or architectural treasures that make our region so unique.
Since 1950, the annual Silver and Turquoise Ball has been one of Tucson's most glamorous traditions, marking the end of the social season. The event began as a simple dinner to thank community members who had worked to preserve Tucson's heritage. The first Silver and Turquoise Ball was organized and hosted by a group of Tucson's most prominent women, including Aurora Pantania, jewelry designer and wife of Frank Pantania, who was known for his silver and turquoise jewelry, Audrey Baird, Peggy Steinfeld, wife of Harold Steinfeld of the Steinfeld's department store, and Isabella Greenway, the first U.S. Congresswoman in Arizona's history and the founder of the Arizona Inn. The dinner was an impromptu potluck to thank the Tucson Festival Society's volunteers for all of their hard work. People gathered at the home of Isabella Greenway, but after it began to rain, the feast moved to the Arizona Inn. By 1952, the party had become an annual tradition, a full social gala. The ball was such a glorious event that pre-parties were held throughout the city and reported in the daily papers. In 1953, Tucson Daily Citizen social editor Kay Carson described the event as a wonderful party, beautiful women in fabulous gowns, handsome men in elegant white jackets, hundreds of hurricane candles on spikes outlining the outdoor dance floor, 2 orchestras, and all our friends to dance and chat with. Naturally, the traditional color scheme for the ball was turquoise and silver. Women were asked to carry out the color scheme in their gowns whenever possible by wearing gray, white, turquoise, or black. Originally, the proceeds from the ball supported the Tucson Festival Society, which organized and presented Pioneer Days, La Parada de los Niños, and the Children's Writing Festival. In 1993, the Silver and Turquoise Board of Hostesses formed a nonprofit organization to distinguish themselves from the Tucson Festival Society. They decided to give the proceeds from the ball to the ongoing restoration efforts at Mission San Javier del Bac. The annual tradition continues to this day. A board of 50 hostesses present this grand event at the Arizona Inn, still featuring a gourmet dinner, 2 dance bands, and of course, stunning silver and turquoise.
Coming up tomorrow night, Jim Ninsel joins us with the Arizona Illustrated Political Roundtable. It's the big weekend ahead of the general election. Will the candidates still have some time to sway voters? I'm Tony Paniagua from all of us at Arizona Public Media. Have a great night.